As we come to this lying down position on our back, let's bend our knees and let our feet rest on the floor. And this bent knee position allows us to stay a little more neutral so that as we soften, we find a little less tension over time. And as we pause here, rather than forcing our breath to move into any kind of pattern whatsoever, allow it to just move naturally in and out through your body. As we pause here, breathing, begin to notice how your body feels. When we're not forcing, we're not pushing, we're not doing, we're just pausing, listening, observing with our mind's eye. As we continue to observe, we notice subtle shifts within our body. We notice sensations that vary per person and how they feel and what's happening. And bringing our awareness back to our breath. I want you to imagine a few things that happen with our breath. And I want you to make sure that you're not forcing or pushing your breath into anything that's uncomfortable. As we continue to breathe, I want you to notice with each exhale a sense of heaviness, of feeling grounded or sinking down. And with each inhale, I want you to feel a sense of lightness, a sense of lifting and opening. And I want you to observe how your breath moves through the back of your ribs. Notice if the back of your ribs move at all. And I want you to notice if your breath moves into your low back, if it creates movement in this area. And I want you to notice if there's any movement in the back of your hips with your breath. The beauty of our bodies and the way they move and the way we breathe is that all of our body moves together with breath, with general movement. But when one area is stuck and doesn't move, becomes rigid or tight, then it creates tension somewhere else in the body as that area has to pick up the slack of what's not moving. So this is a process of listening and learning where we're stuck, where we're not moving. And then we're going to apply a shift in our body, a movement that will affect those areas where we're stuck. Will also affect the areas where we're feeling discomfort. But we first have to understand what's not moving. With our breath, there's a subtle, subtle movement in the back of our hips, our low back, our ribs, to the back of our ribs, the side of our ribs, and the front of our ribs. There's not a lot of movement in the chest area of our breath, even though there is still a subtle movement. This will also affect the way we hold our head. We'll find subtle movement in our neck But our arms and our legs typically don't move. Just our torso. So with this concept in mind, listen to what areas within our torso that are not moving. Lying down allows us to relax a little bit, but can also soften our breath. Try to keep your breath at a normal pace for you. And then when you find those spots that aren't moving, I want you to apply that same sense of heaviness into each exhale and a sense of lightness with each inhale. Now, once we begin to find a little bit of movement within those areas that we're feeling stuck, we're going to start to shift our body. And you don't have to do this until you find movement in those areas. So whether it's your hips, your low back, or the back of your ribs, sides of your ribs, the front of your low part of your ribs, any of those areas. Once you find that movement, kind of shift back into those areas, but yet still move all of the areas. We're going to start to walk our right foot forward just a little bit. So if you curl your toes under, kind of inch your foot forward and then lay your toes back down, that would be a subtle shift. And then I want you to check in with those areas that we're feeling snug, tight, rigid. Notice, can you still breathe through those areas? You still find movement with your breath. And then we're going to do the same thing with our left foot. Curl our toes under, inch our foot forward, and then put our toes back down. Notice what happens to our hips and our low back. Keeping movement to the back side of our body. Then moving only our left foot, we're going to inch our toes forward again by curling our toes under, lift our foot a little bit, and then extend our toes back out. So now we feel our left leg shifting forward a little bit, a little more forward than our right. This will cause the left hip to tip forward a little bit. But again, it's subtle work. Notice how this feels in those areas that we're feeling tight, rigid, areas you feel like you might be protecting. Then we're going to start to inch our left foot back by curling our toes under, shifting our foot back, and then extending our toes back out as we let our foot rest on the floor. With our feet a little more level, notice how we feel. Are we able to keep movement throughout our entire torso? And placing our hands on the front of our hips. Check in with how this feels in our shoulders, in our ribs. Noticing if we're able to breathe and stay soft. Imagining our torso as being pliable. Keeping that sense of grounded and lightness. The ebb and flow of our breath moving our body. Again, letting go of any opportunities to try to brace ourselves and instead just allow ourselves to stay in this safe, supported position. Keeping our hands on the front of our hips. I want you to imagine that you're expanding your hips as if your hips had a balloon inside of each side of your hip bone. And with each inhale, our balloon begins to expand. With each exhale, that balloon begins to soften. Noticing our movement of our hips shifting out and back in. And inch our feet back in a little bit. Check in with how we're able to breathe and move through our hips. And finding very small movement, walk our toes out and then our heels out so that our feet are moving away from each other. And it's just a small step. Notice how that affects our ability to move with our breath in whatever areas we were holding on to tension. And lifting our heels, shift our heels only in and then put them down. Notice that our toes point out a little bit. Are you still able to find movement through those tight or challenging areas within our torso? Walk our feet, our toes in, so now they're in line with our heels. Check in with our ability to find movement within our torso with our breath. Now begin to lift our right heel up off the floor, keeping our toes on the floor. Now lifting our foot can create tension, rigidity. Notice how that emulates throughout our body. Our toes remain on the floor. Looking for those subtle movements, the subtle shift, that sense of grounding and lightness. Put our right heel down, lift our left heel. Listening for movement. Put our left heel down, lift our right heel, then start to lift our toes. This is going to be a lot harder to find movement because this is where we begin to brace. I want you to see if you can find that movement. Put our right foot down, lift our left heel, flex our foot a little bit, lifting our left foot. See if you can find that movement with your breath. The same subtle movement, even though this feels like a lot of work. And releasing our foot down. Take a moment to soften through our hips, our low back. Now I want you to bring your awareness to your ribs again. You're going to find a little more movement to the lowest part of our ribs and a little bit less as you move up. But there still should be movement. And lift our hands away from our hips and extend our arms up a little bit. You can have bent elbows. You can rest your elbows at the side of your ribs. But as we lift our arms up a little bit, I want you to feel movement through your ribs, through your low back, and through our hips. Now, what these are teaching us is that ability to relax within the beginnings of movement. You can lift your arms up a little bit higher. Again, elbows can be bent or straight. Look for that movement, that sense of heaviness and lightness, that ebb and flow. And we're creating patterns of movement without tension, without bracing. Lift our arms up a little bit more. If you feel no change, no effect to the movement within your torso, keep extending your arms up. And if you noticed a place along the way that had tension that you struggled to find movement in, I want you to go to that place. And then I want you to come out of that place. Move to a place where your breath was easy to move through your body, whether that's elbows or arms on the floor, or arms extended up, or somewhere in between. And then come back to that place that was challenging. Then lifting or lowering out of that place to a place that's easy. And then bring our arms back to a place that was challenging. Notice if the challenging is getting a little bit easier to soften. Then release our arms down to the floor. We're going to draw our knees into our chest and give them a hug. Place our hands on our knees. Draw our knees forward. Take our knees wide. Draw them back in towards our shoulders. Knees together and forward. Making circles with our legs within our hip joint. As you can tell, it's a little bit harder to hear movement within our torso when we're moving our body. Even when the movement is subtle or small, because so much is going on in our body at once, it's often hard to hear the subtle areas or the quieter areas of movement. The next time our knees come into our chest, pause and reverse. Notice the sensations within our hips as we find this movement. And then draw our knees into our chest and pause. Lengthening through our low back. See if you can find that sense of heaviness and lightness, the ebb and flow. And then releasing our feet down to the floor. I want you to hug your bellies in, roll to one side, and press yourself up. Come up to an all fours position. Joints stacked, fingers spread wide. Closing our eyes. I want you to feel how you hold your spine. Notice, does your spine able to keep the same shape that you had when you were lying down? Naturally, your body will want to move into that same shape, but at the same time, gravity is going to play a role in how you're able to hold that shape. Now, I want you to try to breathe through your torso, focusing on those areas that you had tension. Notice if you're able to move them. And then slowly extend our right arm forward, thumb pointing up. Can you create movement, subtle movement with our breath? Releasing our right hand down, extend our left hand forward. And we can engage the areas of our body that we need to support the lift of our hand, but at the same time, find movement through our torso. Releasing our left hand down, extend our left foot back. Press through our heel. And then check in with our ability to move through our torso. Releasing our left knee down. Extend our right heel back. Press through our heel. Check in with areas that we are typically holding tension. Once you get them moving, begin to scan your entire torso, listening for anything else. Releasing our right knee down. Close our eyes. Listen to how we hold our body. Listen to our movement. And we're going to move through a cat-cow. On our next inhale, open up our chest, reach our tailbone back. Hold this position. Listen to our breath. Listen to our movement. On our next exhale, hug our bellies in, rounding our back, let our head hang, our tailbone tuck. And listen for movement. Begin to soften to a neutral position. On our next inhale, open up the front of our body, lengthening. Listening for movement, yet support at the same time. And on our next exhale, rounding our back. Finding support and movement. Inhale, open up the front of our body, nice and slow. Listen for that movement at our end range of motion. Then start to bring our spine back to neutral very slowly, pausing, listening for movement, yet stability at the same time. Then start to round a little bit more, maybe moving into a little more neutral position, maybe starting to round a little bit. Check in with the ability to move, then begin to move a little bit further into the pose. Pausing, listening for movement in our rib cage, our low back, our hips, mainly our spine. Keep moving into cat pose. Then slowly begin to inch our way into cow pose. Pausing along the way, listening for any rigidity. And then slowly start moving our way back into a neutral spine that feels something very similarly to what we were doing lying on our back. Then bend our elbows, place our forearms on the mat. Let our hands move in any position we like. Let our upper body hang down towards the floor. You can let your head hang, your upper body hang. We're looking for pure relaxation within the upper body. Listening to how we hold our hips. And begin to move into the cat-cow of our lower body. Pausing, listening. And after moving through a full cycle of our cat-cow, I want you to bring your spine into a neutral position. Imagine that balloon within our hips that's allowing our hips to expand out with each inhale. And each exhale, softening into a neutral position within our hips. Then hug our bellies in, lift our head, come up onto our hands. We're going to crawl forward, and then we're going to flip over onto our backs. Letting our arms relax out and our knees remain bent. Find a position that feels neutral and comfortable for you. Closing our eyes, feeling only the subtle work of our breath moving through our torso. Drawing our awareness back to our breath and our body. Let's roll over to whatever side feels comfortable for us and press ourselves up. As we let our hands rest in our lap and we rise up through our spine with very little effort. Notice how that feels. There should be a sense of gravity playing on our shoulders, the ability to keep a neutral spine and to hold our head on top of that. There should also be a sense of awareness that we've created in this journey with our breath and our torso. Let's bring our hands together in front of our heart, seal in all that we found, whether we liked it or not, but all that we learned about our breath and our body and its ability to hold shape while letting go of tension. Take that as a gift that we can use off of our mat into our day-to-day life. Namaste.